On the seventh day, Captain Jake Morrison finally broke the silence that had gripped the galaxy for a week. At exactly noon, ship time, Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon and nodded to Amy Sullivan. She opened a communication channel directly to Emperor Thaxon's flagship. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Horizon," Jake said in a calm, clear voice that carried across space to 300 alien ships. "We have completed our analysis. Thank you for the educational opportunity. We will be departing now." That was all. 16 words that changed everything. On the Eternal Glory, Emperor Thaxon stared at the communication screen in shock. Analysis? Educational opportunity? What did that mean? They were studying us? Admiral Krex asked, his voice tight with worry. For 7 days, they were analyzing our fleet. Dr. Quen was looking at the biological readings from all 4 human ships. "Your Majesty, their stress levels are actually decreasing. They're more relaxed now than they have been all week." More relaxed? Why would they be more relaxed? Because they finished whatever they came here to do. Jake turned to Tony. "Martinez at the engineering station. Drive status? All 4 ships ready to jump on your command, Captain." Jake looked at his tactical display one more time. 300 alien ships in a perfect circle around 4 human vessels. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity was really capable of. "Execute jump sequence," Jake ordered. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. All 4 human ships powered up their jump drives at exactly the same moment. The alien fleet scrambled to respond, weapons charging, shields at maximum power. Emperor Thaxon shouted orders to attack before the humans could escape, but the humans didn't jump away. Instead, they jumped to 4 new positions in perfect synchronization. The horizon appeared directly above Emperor Thaxon's flagship. The Liberty materialized beside Admiral Krex's command ship. The Freedom positioned itself next to the fleet's main weapons platform. The Discovery took position near the alien communications hub. For exactly 60 seconds, the 4 human ships held positions where they could have devastated the most important vessels in the Zephyrian Grand Fleet. Their weapons were powered but not aimed at anything. Their shields were up but not attacking. They just sat there calm and quiet, demonstrating that they could have destroyed the alien command structure anytime they wanted. Emperor Thaxon felt his blood turn cold as he stared at the human ship floating just outside his bridge windows. These beings could have killed him at any moment during the past week, but they had chosen not to. "Your Majesty," Dr. Quen whispered, "I think we have made a terrible mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "We thought they were trapped here with us, but we were trapped here with them." After exactly 60 seconds, Jake Morrison opened communications one more time. "Humanity appreciates your hospitality," his voice carried across the alien fleet. "We hope our peoples can meet again under more pleasant circumstances." Then, as quietly as they had arrived, all 4 human ships jumped away, leaving the entire Zephyrian Grand Fleet untouched, but completely humbled. Captain Steve Johnson was the first to report in once they reached the rendezvous point, safely, distant from the alien fleet. "Jake, that was either the smartest thing I've ever seen or the craziest." Steve's voice came over the communication system. "Maybe both," Jake replied. "But it worked." Captain Maria Santos joined the conversation. "The aliens got the message. We could have destroyed their command ships, but we chose not to. And now they know that humanity doesn't attack unless we have to," added Captain Alex Turner from the Discovery. Jake looked at his crew on the bridge of the horizon. They had been through 7 days of the strangest battle in human history, and they had won without firing a single shot. "Amy, any communications from the alien fleet?" Amy checked her instruments. "They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, sir. It sounds like they're calling off their ships and ordering them to return to base." Dr. Lisa Parker was analyzing the final scans they had taken of the alien vessels. "Captain, we learned more about their technology in 1 week than we could have learned in years of normal contact. Their weapons, their shields, their ship design, everything." "And they learned what about us?" Jake asked. "That we're not afraid of them. That we can coordinate complex operations without communications they can intercept. And that we have the Discipline not to attack even when we have every advantage. Colonel Ryan Clark was studying the tactical recordings of their final demonstration. Captain, the formation we used was perfect. If we had wanted to destroy their command structure, we could have done it in seconds. But we didn't want to destroy it, Jake said. We wanted to show them that we could have, and chose not to. 3 hours later, as the 4 human ships prepared to jump back to Earth, Amy picked up a transmission from the alien fleet. It was broadcast on all frequencies in dozens of languages, across the entire galaxy. Emperor Thaxon's voice carried a tone Jake had never heard from him before. Respect. By imperial decree, the alien emperor announced, human space is hereby declared neutral territory. No vessels of the Zephyrian Empire will approach human ships unless specifically invited to do so. The species known as humanity is to be treated as honored equals. Amy looked at Jake in amazement. Captain, they're afraid of us. No, Jake said quietly. They respect us. There's a difference. The 4 human ships jumped back toward Earth, carrying with them the most important intelligence humanity had ever gathered. They knew now that they were not alone in the galaxy, that there were empires out there with thousands of ships and millions of worlds, but they also knew that humanity had something those empires lacked: the ability to stay calm under pressure. The discipline to wait and watch instead of attacking or surrendering. The wisdom to win without fighting. Back on Earth, Admiral Patricia Hayes debriefed the returning crews in the deepest levels of Earth Command. The story of the Silent Fleet was classified at the highest levels, but the lessons learned would shape human space policy for generations. Captain Morrison, Admiral Hayes said after reviewing all the reports, you and your crews have possibly prevented a war that humanity wasn't ready to fight. We just did what seemed right at the time, Admiral. What seemed right was to sit silent for 7 days while surrounded by 300 enemy warships. Jake thought about that for a moment. We learned something important out there, Admiral. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. The alien emperor himself has requested a meeting with you and the other captains. He wants to establish formal diplomatic relations. When? Next month on a neutral space station. He specifically asked to meet with the Silent Fleet commanders. Jake smiled. The Silent Fleet. He liked that name. 6 months later, the first human embassy was established in Zephyrian space. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. The 2 species that had first met in conflict were building a future of cooperation. And in military academies across the galaxy, students studied the battle of the Silent Fleet. The engagement where humanity faced impossible odds and won by doing absolutely nothing at all. The lesson spread to other species, other conflicts. Sometimes patience was more powerful than weapons. Sometimes silence was more effective than words. Sometimes the greatest victory came from having the strength not to fight. Emperor Thaxon himself said it best in his memoirs, written years later. We thought we had encountered a species of warriors. Instead, we had met a species of philosophers. They taught us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy your enemies, but in the wisdom to turn them into friends. Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero, but he never talked publicly about what happened during those 7 days. When asked by reporters about the secret to humanity's first diplomatic success, he would only smile and say, sometimes the most important thing you can say is nothing at all. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their ships or their courage. Though they had all of those things, humanity's greatest weapon was their ability to think before they acted, to wait when others would attack, and to find victory through patience rather than violence. And in the quiet depths of space, where the first human ships had faced an empire, and won through silence, a small monument was placed. It bore a simple inscription. Here humanity learned that the most feared enemy is not the one who roars the loudest, but the one who says nothing at all. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, staring at the massive object floating in space before them. The structure was huge, bigger than Earth's moon, and it looked nothing like anything humans had ever built. Its dark metal surface was covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and move when he looked at them directly. How long has it been out here? Jake asked his crew. Dr. Lisa Chen looked up from her computer screen. She was the ship's expert on alien things, and her eyes were bright with excitement. Based on the metal decay and cosmic radiation damage, I think this thing has been floating here for at least 1,000,000 years. Maybe more. Lieutenant Alex Rodriguez worked at the communication station, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. I'm picking up some kind of signal from inside. It's very weak, but it's definitely artificial, not natural space noise. Commander Nina Parker crossed her arms and frowned. She was Jake's second in command, and always worried about safety first. Captain, we should be careful. We don't know what this thing is or what it might do to us. Jake nodded. Nina was right to be worried, but this was the kind of discovery that could change everything for humanity. They had been exploring space for over 300 years, and this was their first real sign of advanced alien life. Dr. Chen, what do you think? Is it safe to get closer? Jake asked. Lisa checked her readings again. The structure isn't giving off any dangerous radiation. No weapon signatures that I can detect. It looks like it's mostly shut down, running on minimal power. I think we can approach safely. The New Horizon moved closer to the alien structure. As they got near, Jake could see that the surface was covered in millions of small openings like windows or doors. Some areas looked damaged, as if something had tried to break in or break out. There, Alex said, pointing at his screen. I found the source of the signal. It's coming from a large opening on the side facing us. Looks like some kind of entrance. Jake made his decision. Prepare a shuttle team. Lisa, you're with me. Alex, I want you to come too in case we need to communicate with whatever's in there. Nina, you stay here and keep the ship ready to leave quickly if needed. Nina looked unhappy. Captain, I really think we should study this from a distance first. Send probes, run more scans. We don't know anything about the aliens who built this. That's exactly why we need to go inside, Jake said. This could be the biggest discovery in human history. We can't pass it up. 2 hours later, Jake, Lisa, and Alex were floating through space in their shuttle, heading toward the opening in the alien structure. Their suits had full life support, and they carried enough supplies for 12 hours of exploration. The opening was even bigger than it looked from far away. Their entire shuttle could have fit through it 20 times over. As they passed through, their lights lit up walls covered in symbols and pictures. Look at this, Lisa whispered over the radio. These walls are covered in writing, and these pictures, they show different kinds of aliens, dozens of different species. Alex was recording everything with his cameras. The symbols look like they might be some kind of universal language, like they were designed to be understood by anyone who found this place. They moved deeper into the structure, following corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were lined with what looked like computer screens, all dark now but showing signs they had once been active. Finally, they reached a huge room at the center of the structure. It was filled with thousands of tall, crystal-like objects that glowed with a soft blue light. Each crystal seemed to contain swirling patterns of light and shadow. What are these things? Jake asked. Lisa approached one of the crystals carefully. Her scanner beeped as it analyzed the object. It's some kind of data storage device. Each one of these crystals contains massive amounts of information. This whole place, it's like a giant library. Alex found a control panel near the center of the room. The symbols on it were similar to the ones they had seen on the walls. I think I can activate some of these systems. The power levels are low, but there's enough to run basic functions. Do it, Jake said. Alex pressed several symbols on the control panel. The room suddenly came alive with light and sound. The crystals began to glow brighter, and holographic displays appeared in the air around them. Lisa gasped as she watched the displays. These are records from different civilizations. Look, this one shows a planet with blue oceans and green continents, and this one has cities floating in gas clouds. How many civilizations are recorded here? Jake asked. Lisa checked her readings. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Each crystal seems to contain the complete history of a different alien species. Alex was working on translating the symbols. His computer was making progress, slowly figuring out the meaning of the alien language. I'm getting some translations. This place is called the Archive of Final Words. And these aren't just histories, Captain. They're last messages. What do you mean, last messages? Jake asked. Alex's face went pale as he read more of the translations. Every single civilization recorded here is extinct. These are their final transmissions before they died out. And, Captain, they all died the same way. Lisa moved to another crystal, scanning its contents. This is impossible. These civilizations were spread across the galaxy, separated by thousands of years. How could they all have the same ending? Alex continued reading the translations. They all mention something called the Sleepers or the Ancient Ones. Every last message is a warning about awakening something that should have stayed asleep. Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. What kind of warning? Alex found a crystal that contained clearer translations. This one is from a species called the Zorvani. Their last message was sent only 50 years ago. He paused, reading the text carefully. It says, "We have awakened them. They come for all who know. Destroy the archive. Save yourselves." Nina's voice crackled over their radio from the ship. "Captain, I'm reading some strange energy signatures from inside the structure. Power levels are rising throughout the entire facility." Lisa checked her scanner and saw the same thing. "The archive is activating. Our presence here has triggered some kind of automatic system. We need to get out of here," Jake said. But he couldn't stop looking at the crystals around them. Each one contained the last words of an entire civilization, all warning about the same terrible threat. Alex's computer finished translating another message. "Captain, you need to hear this. This is from a species that existed 2 million years ago. They say, the Watchers sleep until new voices call to them. Each civilization that finds the archive sends a signal across the void. The sleepers wake, and they hunger for those who have learned to reach for the stars." The lights in the room began to pulse faster, and a deep humming sound filled the air. The crystal containing the Zorvani message began to glow brighter than the others. "We've made a terrible mistake," Nina said over the radio. "The entire structure is powering up. Whatever this thing is, we've turned it on just by being here." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "We can't leave yet. We need to understand what we're dealing with. If these warnings are real, if something is coming because we found this place, then Earth needs to know." Lisa nodded, her face determined despite her fear. "The captain is right. We have to learn everything we can." As if responding to their decision, the archive systems fully activated. Lights blazed throughout the structure, and the crystals began to sing with harmonized frequencies. Deep in space, signals began to travel faster than light toward distant sleeping entities that had been waiting for eons to hear new voices calling from the darkness. The trap had been set millions of years ago, and humanity had just walked into it. 3 days had passed since the archive came alive, and the New Horizon remained docked to the alien structure. Jake Morrison had made the decision to stay and learn everything they could, despite Nina's growing concerns about their safety. Dr. Lisa Chen had barely slept during those 3 days. She spent every hour studying the crystal records, learning about the hundreds of dead civilizations stored within the archive. Each story was different, but they all ended the same way, with desperate warnings about awakening something ancient and terrible. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa called from her workstation in the archive's main chamber. She had set up equipment throughout the room, connecting human computers to the alien systems. Jake floated over to where she was working. The zero gravity inside the structure took some getting used to, but they had all adapted quickly. "What did you find?" Lisa pointed to a holographic display showing a star map. "I've been tracking the pattern of how these civilizations died. Look at this." She pressed a control, and red dots began appearing on the map, showing the locations of extinct species. "They didn't all die at random times, there's a pattern." "What kind of pattern?" Jake asked. "Every time a civilization reaches a certain level of technology, specifically the ability to travel between stars, they eventually find one of these archives. There are dozens of them scattered throughout the galaxy, and within months of discovering an archive, the civilization vanishes completely, Alex Rodriguez had been working on communication systems nearby. He floated over to join the conversation. I've been analyzing the signals this place is sending out. They're not just radio waves or light beams. This thing is broadcasting through some kind of space that exists parallel to normal space. The signals are traveling faster than anything should be able to move. Engineer Tony Blake, who had joined them from the ship, was studying the archive's power systems. That's not the worst part, he said grimly. This entire structure exists partially outside normal physics. The power source isn't nuclear or chemical. It's drawing energy from somewhere else entirely. Jake felt a growing sense of dread. What are you saying? Tony showed them his readings on a portable scanner. I'm saying this thing operates on principles we don't understand. The metal it's made from doesn't exist in our periodic table. The power systems tap into dimensions we can't even detect properly. Whoever built this was far more advanced than we are. Lisa brought up another display. I found something else. The archives aren't just libraries. They're also beacons. Every time someone activates an archive by studying it, the beacon sends out a signal containing detailed information about the species that found it. Information about us? Jake said, understanding the implications. Yes. Our biology, our technology level, our population, the location of Earth, everything. It's all been transmitted to something out there in deep space. Alex's communication equipment suddenly started beeping rapidly. He rushed back to his station, checking the incoming signals. Captain, I'm detecting responses to the beacon's transmission. Multiple responses coming from different directions. What kind of responses? Alex's face went pale as he analyzed the data. Movement. Large objects that were previously invisible to our sensors are now moving throughout the galaxy. They're heading toward inhabited star systems. On the New Horizons bridge, Nina Parker watched her sensor displays with growing alarm. Captain, you need to get back to the ship right now. I'm tracking at least 12 massive objects moving through space. They're bigger than anything we've ever seen. Jake's radio crackled with Nina's voice. How big? Bigger than planets, Captain. Some of them are larger than gas giants, and they're moving fast, faster than our best ships. One of them is heading directly toward the Centauri system. Lisa quickly accessed the archive's records about the Centauri colonies. There are 12 million humans living in that system, she said quietly. Tony Blake had been studying the archive's internal systems when he made a disturbing discovery. Captain, I think I know what this place really is. It's not just a library or a beacon. It's a trap. What do you mean? Tony showed them a section of the archive they hadn't explored before. It was filled with empty crystal storage units. Thousands of them, all waiting to be filled. The archives don't just record the final messages of dead civilizations. They're designed to attract new civilizations, study them, and then preserve their last words for future visitors. Jake felt sick. You're saying this whole thing is bait? Exactly. Advanced civilizations naturally develop space travel, which leads them to explore and eventually find the archives. The archives study them, send their information to the hunters, and then wait for the civilization to be destroyed so they can record their final desperate messages. Alex was monitoring communications from the Centauri system when his equipment detected something terrible. Captain, the object heading for Centauri, it just arrived. What's happening there? Jake asked. Alex listened to his equipment for several minutes, his expression growing more horrified. Nothing, Captain. There's no communication from any of the colonies. No distress signals, no emergency broadcasts. The entire system has just gone quiet. Lisa checked the archive systems and found new data being recorded. A new crystal had activated, one that was previously empty. The archive is recording something new. It's cataloging the Centauri colonies as extinct. 12 million people can't just disappear, Nina said over the radio. Tony Blake was studying energy readings from the direction of Centauri. According to these scans, the system still exists. The star is still there, the planets are still in orbit. But there are no signs of life, no artificial signals, no trace that humans were ever there. Jake tried to understand what they were dealing with. What could do something like that? What could erase an entire civilization without destroying the planets they lived on? Lisa found her answer in the archive's oldest records. I found references to them in the earliest entries. They're called the Devourers. According to these records, they've been hunting civilizations for millions of years. They don't just kill, they consume the very concept of a species' existence. That's impossible, Alex said. Is it? Lisa asked. We're standing inside a structure that exists partially outside normal space, built by beings we can't even comprehend. Maybe there are things in the universe that can erase civilizations from reality itself. Tony's scanner detected another energy surge from the archive's beacon system. It's sending another signal, more detailed information about Earth and human colonies. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Alex, send an emergency transmission to Earth. Tell them everything we've found. Warn them about what's coming. What should I tell them, Captain? Jake thought for a moment, then spoke the words that would become humanity's most important message. Tell them that we may have doomed us all. Tell them we found something we shouldn't have, and now it's too late to go back. Alex began transmitting, but his equipment detected interference. Captain, the archive is jamming some of our communications. I can send the message, but it will be fragmented and might not reach Earth clearly. Nina's voice came over the radio with urgent news. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting more objects moving toward human colonies, and there's something much larger heading in the direction of Earth. Based on its speed, it will reach our solar system in less than 72 hours. Lisa continued studying the archive records, looking for any hope, any clue about how previous civilizations had tried to fight back. Some species did try to resist. The architects who built advanced technology managed to damage one archive before they were consumed, but even they only delayed their fate by a few months. Jake looked around at the archive, at the thousands of crystals containing the last words of dead civilizations, and realized the terrible truth. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were witnesses to humanity's impending doom, trapped in a structure designed to document their species' final moments. Captain, Tony said quietly, there might be one option. The archive's beacon system uses quantum entanglement to communicate with the Devourer fleet. If we could overload the system, create some kind of feedback loop, what would that require? Tony checked his calculations. More power than our ship's reactor can provide safely. We'd have to create a deliberate overload, probably destroying the New Horizon in the process. Jake understood what Tony was suggesting. A desperate sacrifice that might disrupt the Devourer's communication network, possibly buying Earth some time to prepare a defense. As if responding to their growing understanding of the situation, the archive's systems pulsed with new energy. In the distance, something vast and hungry had received their beacon's signal and was approaching to claim its newest prey. Captain Jake Morrison faced the hardest decision of his life. The massive Devourer entity was less than 6 hours away from their position, and Earth's fate hung in the balance. He gathered his crew in the New Horizon's main meeting room to discuss their desperate situation. We can't outrun them, Nina Parker said, looking at the tactical displays. Their ships move faster than anything we have. Even if we left right now, they would catch us before we could reach any safe location. Dr. Lisa Chen had been working around the clock, studying every piece of data from the archive. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but her voice was steady. I found something in the architect records. They discovered that the archives maintain a direct link to the Devourer fleet through quantum entanglement. If we could disrupt that connection, we might be able to slow them down or confuse them, Engineer Tony Blake finished, but it would require overloading our ship's reactor and channeling all that energy through the archive systems. Alex, Rodriguez looked up from his communication station. I managed to send another transmission to Earth, but the signal is still being jammed. They might get fragments of our warning, but probably not the complete message. Jake stood up and walked to the viewing port, staring out at the alien structure they had discovered. How many people would we be trying to save? Earth has 8 billion humans, Lisa said quietly. The outer colonies have another 2 billion. If the Devourers consume all human settlements like they did at Centauri, that's 10 billion lives. And How many of us would survive the reactor overload? Tony shook his head. None of us, Captain. The explosion would destroy both the New Horizon and probably most of the archive, but the quantum feedback might travel through the entanglement network and disrupt the Devourer's coordination. Nina crossed her arms. Might isn't good enough. We'd be throwing away our lives on a theory. It's the only theory we have, Lisa said. Every other civilization just waited for the end. The architects were the only ones who tried to fight back, and their data suggests they actually damaged the Devourer network before being consumed. Jake made his decision. We'll split the crew. Half of you will take the escape pods and head for the Outer Rim colonies. You'll carry copies of everything we've learned about the Devourers. The other half will stay and attempt the reactor overload. I'm staying, Lisa said immediately. Me too, Tony added. You'll need an engineer to handle the overload sequence. Alex stood up. And you'll need someone to coordinate the quantum feedback transmission. I'm staying as well. Nina looked at her captain with a mixture of respect and frustration. Jake, this is suicide. Even if the plan works, you'll all be dead. But Earth might survive, Jake replied. That's what matters. While they were making preparations, pilot Susan Wright volunteered for a reconnaissance mission. She took a small stealth shuttle to observe the approaching Devourer entity and gather intelligence about their enemy. What Susan saw changed everything she thought she knew about the universe. The Devourer ship wasn't a ship at all. It was a living creature of impossible size and geometry. It moved through space like a massive jellyfish swimming through an ocean, but parts of it seemed to exist in dimensions her instruments couldn't properly measure. Captain, Susan transmitted back to the New Horizon. This thing doesn't follow the laws of physics as we understand them. It's partially in normal space, but most of it exists somewhere else entirely. And Captain, I think it's aware of me. The entity suddenly changed direction, moving directly toward Susan's shuttle. She engaged her stealth systems, but the creature seemed to track her anyway, as if it could sense her thoughts rather than her ship. It's not just hunting in space, Susan reported. It's hunting in the dimension where thoughts exist. It can feel our minds, our consciousness. That's how it finds its prey so easily. Back on Earth, Admiral Roy Martinez was trying to make sense of the fragmented transmissions from the New Horizon. The messages were broken and unclear, but certain words came through clearly. Ancient threat, galaxy-wide extinction, and doomed us all. At first, the Earth governments dismissed the warnings as equipment malfunctions or some kind of hoax. But when astronomical observatories began reporting that entire star systems were simply vanishing from their telescopes, panic spread through the Space Command centers. Sir, a communications officer said to Admiral Martinez, we've lost contact with all our colonies in the Centauri system. No distress signals, no emergency beacons, they're just gone. Martinez studied the star charts, watching as more and more systems went dark. How many people were in Centauri? 12 million, sir. The Admiral felt the weight of command pressing down on him. If Captain Morrison's warnings were true, Earth had less than 2 days to prepare for an enemy they didn't understand using weapons they couldn't imagine. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Chen made a breakthrough in the archive's database. She discovered that the Devourers had a weakness they didn't fully understand themselves. The ancient records showed that they fed on order, structure, and logical thought patterns. But chaotic, emotional, and unpredictable thinking could disrupt their feeding process. That's why humans have lasted longer than other species, Lisa explained to the crew. We're naturally chaotic and emotional compared to most advanced civilizations. Our unpredictability makes us harder for them to process. Tony Blake was deep inside the New Horizons engine room, preparing the reactor for deliberate overload. The process was dangerous and complex, requiring precise timing to create the maximum quantum feedback effect. I've rigged the containment field to collapse in a specific pattern, Tony explained over the intercom. When the reactor goes critical, it should create a quantum pulse that travels through the archive's entanglement network. With luck, it'll disrupt every devourer in the galaxy for at least a few minutes. Alex Rodriguez was working on amplifying the effect by broadcasting human thought patterns through the quantum link. If Dr. Chen is right about chaos disrupting their feeding, Maybe we can overload their collective consciousness with pure human emotion and creativity. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the devourer entity approach their position. It was close enough now that he could see its impossible geometry with the naked eye, a writhing mass of dark energy that hurt to look at directly. "Captain," Susan Wright's voice came over the radio from her shuttle. "The entity is trying to communicate. It's sending thoughts directly into my mind." "What is it saying?" Susan's voice was strained, as if she was fighting against an alien presence in her thoughts. "It's showing me images of other civilizations, thousands of them, all the species it has consumed over millions of years. It wants me to understand how futile resistance is." The devourer entity began transmitting the same images to the entire crew of the New Horizon. They saw advanced civilizations that had built incredible technologies, species that had mastered faster than light travel and energy manipulation, beings that had seemed godlike in their capabilities. All of them had fallen to the devourers. But Lisa Chen noticed something the entity probably didn't intend to show them. In the final moments of each civilization's destruction, there were brief flashes of disruption in the devourer's feeding process. Moments when pure emotion, love, sacrifice, or defiant hope had caused the entities to hesitate or stumble. "It's afraid," Lisa realized. "It's showing us these images not just to intimidate us, but because it's actually concerned about our unpredictability. It doesn't understand emotions like love or sacrifice, and that makes us dangerous to it." Jake made his final preparations. "All crew members who are leaving, get to the escape pods now. Tony, begin the reactor overload sequence. Alex, prepare to broadcast every piece of human culture and emotion we have through the quantum link." The escape pods launched into space, carrying half the crew toward safety. The remaining members of the New Horizon prepared for their final mission. They would sacrifice themselves in the hope that their chaos and creativity could disrupt an ancient evil that had consumed galaxies. The devourer entity reached the archive, and for the first time in millions of years, it encountered something it had never expected, a species willing to destroy itself not for conquest or survival, but simply to give others a chance to live. The reactor overload sequence began, and quantum energy started building toward a feedback pulse that would echo across the galaxy. The devourer entity reached the archive just as the New Horizons reactor entered the final stages of overload. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, watching through the viewports as something beyond human comprehension approached their position. The creature was massive beyond description, stretching for thousands of kilometers in every direction. But what made it truly terrifying was that parts of it existed in dimensions that human eyes couldn't properly see. It appeared as a writhing mass of dark energy, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at, and seemed to change when observed. Directly. "Captain," Alex Rodriguez called from his communication station. "It's trying to communicate with us directly, not through radio or any technology. It's putting thoughts straight into our minds." Jake felt the alien presence pressing against his consciousness. Images flooded his mind, visions of ancient civilizations that had tried to fight the devourers, and failed. He saw species with technology far beyond humanity's, beings who could manipulate matter and energy like gods, all reduced to nothing by these cosmic predators. "Do you see now?" The voice in his head wasn't really a voice at all, but a direct transmission of meaning and emotion. "Every species believes they are special, that they alone can resist the inevitable. You are no different from the thousands we have consumed before you." Dr. Lisa Chen, working frantically at her station, felt the same mental intrusion, but instead of despair, she felt something else. Curiosity. The entity was showing them failures, but it was also revealing its own fears. Why would something so powerful need to intimidate its prey? "It's afraid of us," Lisa said aloud, fighting against the alien thoughts in her mind. "It wouldn't need to show us these visions if it was completely confident." The devourer entity paused, as if surprised by her response. For millions of years, it had encountered species that either submitted in terror or fought with logical, predictable strategies. But humans were different. They found hope in hopeless situations and drew strength from their very mortality. Engineer Tony Blake was deep in the ship's reactor core, his hands flying over control panels as he guided the overload sequence. The radiation levels were already lethal, but his protective suit would keep him alive long enough to complete the process. Reactor at 90% of critical mass, Tony reported over the intercom. The quantum feedback pulse will be ready in 3 minutes. The Devourer entity suddenly focused its attention on the new horizon, sensing the dangerous energy building within the human ship. It had encountered species that tried to destroy themselves rather than be consumed, but this felt different. The humans weren't just committing suicide, they were trying to weaponize their own destruction. "You cannot harm us," the entity communicated to Jake's mind. "We have existed for millions of years, we have consumed galaxies. Your small ship is nothing to us." But Jake could sense uncertainty in the creature's mental voice. He smiled grimly as he prepared his final transmission to Earth. "Maybe not. But we're going to try anyway." Alex Rodriguez was broadcasting human culture through the quantum link. Music, poetry, art, literature, comedy, and tragedy, all streaming directly into the Devourer's collective consciousness. The ancient entities, accustomed to logical and ordered thinking, found themselves overwhelmed by the chaotic beauty of human emotion. "Look at what they're sending," Lisa said, monitoring the quantum link. "Our culture, our emotions, our dreams. It's confusing them. They don't understand how beings who know they're going to die can still create beauty and hope." The Devourer entity tried to shut down the transmission, but the quantum entanglement network was too complex. Human thoughts and feelings were flowing directly into the collective minds of creatures that had forgotten what it meant to feel anything other than hunger. On Earth, Admiral Roy Martinez received Jake Morrison's final transmission. The message was clearer this time, as the Devourers were too distracted to jam the signal effectively. "Earth, this is Captain Morrison of the New Horizon. We have discovered an ancient threat that has been consuming civilizations for millions of years. They are heading for Earth and our colonies. We don't know if we can stop them, but we're going to try. If we fail, remember this. They feed on logic and order. Chaos and emotion disrupt them. Fight them with everything that makes us human. This is Earth's final transmission. You have doomed us all, but maybe doom can work both ways." Admiral Martinez felt a chill as he listened to the message. In the background, he could hear alarms and the sound of systems overloading. Then the transmission cut to static. Back at the archive, the New Horizons reactor reached critical mass. Tony Blake made his final adjustments to the containment field, ensuring that the explosion would create the maximum quantum feedback effect. "Reactor overload in 30 seconds. Tony announced. "It's been an honor serving with you all." The Devourer entity realized what was happening and tried to stop the overload by attacking the ship directly. But as its attention focused on the New Horizon, it made a critical mistake. It opened its mind more fully to the human thoughts flowing through the quantum link. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient creature experienced something new. Doubt. The humans weren't acting logically. They were sacrificing themselves not for any strategic advantage, but simply because they believed it was the right thing to do. This concept was alien to beings that existed only to consume. Jake Morrison stood calmly on his bridge as the final countdown began. "Alex, make sure the transmission keeps broadcasting even after we're gone. Let them feel everything that makes us human." "Already done, Captain. I've programmed it to continue transmitting from the escape pods as well. Every human thought, every emotion, every dream we've ever had, it's all flowing into their network." Lisa, Chen watched her scanners as the quantum feedback pulse prepared to launch. "Captain, I'm reading massive disruption in the Devourer's energy patterns. Our chaos is actually hurting it." The entity writhed in space, its impossible geometry flickering as human emotions crashed against its ancient consciousness. Love, hate, joy, sorrow, hope, despair. All the feelings that the Devourers had erased from countless civilizations were suddenly flooding back into their collective mind. 5 seconds to reactor overload, Tony announced. Jake Morrison spoke, his final words knowing they would be transmitted across the quantum network to every devourer in the galaxy. "We are human. We dream impossible dreams and fight unwinnable wars. We create beauty, knowing it will fade, and we love each other, knowing we will die. You cannot consume what you cannot understand. The New Horizons reactor exploded in a cascade of quantum energy that rippled across space and time. The feedback pulse traveled through the entanglement network at impossible speed, carrying with it the full spectrum of human consciousness. Every poem ever written, every song ever sung, every act of love and sacrifice in human history. The devourer entity convulsed as the wave of pure humanity hit its mind. For millions of years, it had fed on ordered, logical civilizations. But humans were different. They were beautifully, chaotically, impossibly alive in ways the ancient creature couldn't comprehend. The explosion destroyed the New Horizon and severely damaged the archive, but the quantum pulse continued traveling through the galaxy. Every devourer entity in the collective network suddenly found itself experiencing human emotions for the first time. Many of the ancient creatures simply shut down, unable to process the overwhelming flood of feelings. Others began to question their purpose for the first time in eons. A few fled to the edges of the galaxy, no longer certain that consumption was their only purpose. The sacrifice of the New Horizons crew had created something unprecedented in galactic history. Doubt in the minds of beings that had considered themselves perfect predators. On Earth, Admiral Martinez watched his instruments as something incredible happened. The massive object heading toward their solar system suddenly stopped moving. Then slowly it began to retreat back into deep space. Humanity had done the impossible. They had made ancient gods afraid,